High home prices and interest rates have contributed to a relatively stuck market that's on pace for the slowest pace of existing home sales growth in a quarter century. So what's it going to take to unstick it and bring in new buyers? Let's talk to Meredith Whitney about that. Meredith Whitney, Advisory Group CEO. Meredith, it's good to see you. I mean, these numbers are pretty astonishing in terms of the ages, right? If you take home buyers overall, not just first time, the age is 59.
Yeah, up 50% from 2010. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is astonishing. So, what can be done, or do we just have to wait around for rates to come down?
I think, one of the biggest problems is that over 60% of homes are owned by people over 60 and they're not moving. So they, by and large, own their homes full out. And for them to downsize, they're not getting much on a value basis for them to downsize. So they prefer to age in place. That keeps the market pretty gummed up. So there's even less inventory than there would be otherwise. There's obviously a shortage of housing inventory, but existing homes, there's a gummed up market, as you said, because people are aging in place. They don't want to sell. So one thing that I think is interesting, a couple of things have been floated over the last week, which is a 50-year mortgage, which doesn't make much sense to me, or a portable mortgage, which I'm not exactly sure how that works. But one thing that is encouraging is there's something that was passed in the Senate Banking Committee over the summer in July, which is the Road Reinvention of the American Dream Act for housing. And so what it focuses is insofar of what the federal government can do, which is limited, which is, let's say, 20 to 30% of the pain. Most of it's a local problem, a regional problem, is getting rid of a lot of the red tape and encouraging funding programs and grant programs for the states that are really going to accelerate housing programs and build more housing. And there's a big emphasis on manufactured housing, which is over a quarter cheaper than the site-built, stick-built homes. And I think that's going to be a big way forward for housing, which is just build much more affordable housing and then get government programs to incent more opportunity zones and smaller lot sizes. There's a lot that can be done, and kudos to the bipartisan passing of the bill in the House Banking Committee. That moves then to the larger Senate and then the House. Obviously, the House Banking Committee is going to have to take a close look at it, but it looks pretty good, and I think that's probably a better step forward than what seems to be a quick fix, but not a very realistic quick fix in terms of a 50-year mortgage or a portable mortgage.
Why is a 50-year mortgage, in your view, not a good idea?
It doesn't really lower the cost. I mean, to me, you've got to do two things.
Doesn't it increase the cost? Potentially?
It doesn't necessarily lower the cost competitively for a 30-year mortgage necessarily. You're paying down a lot of interest. You're not paying down a lot of principal with that structure, and you're not building a lot of equity, which is what the American dream is all about. So if you look at seniors, I always go back to seniors, which again own 60+% of homes. 79% of them, 76% of them own homes without a mortgage. So they bought their home likely with a mortgage. They paid down because they paid more down in principal than in interest. A 50-year mortgage works the opposite way. So it's not clear that it lowers costs. But again, you've got to have two things. They're not mutually exclusive. You have to have home prices come down, and you have to have rates come down to make housing more affordable. You just can't have lower rates and have home prices stay so stubbornly high. So home prices have gone up over 45% since 2020. And so there's softness in the Texas market, in the Florida market, but overall home prices are still stubbornly high. And that's keeping a lot of, as you led the segment on, first-time buyers out of the market. I think a lot of what I call avocado toasters, which are a combination of younger millennials and Gen Z, think that perhaps the American dream is just out of the realm of possibility, and that they'll be renting for their lives. And maybe that's not a bad thing, because renting has actually been cheaper than owning because of the high prices associated with homeowners insurance and overall cost of maintaining a home.
Now, barring a regulatory solution or a legislative solution, like you mentioned, in terms of market dynamics, what would need to change? Obviously rates coming down would help, but how much do rates and prices need to come down, and what's going to get them to come down?
Well, I mean, sorry, I hate to use this. More sellers than buyers always gets the market to come down. There are more buyers than sellers right now, and so that means that home prices are going to be higher for longer. And then, of course, rates coming down by at least 100 basis points. That would be, I'm going back to when the last time the housing market was hot was 2020, very early 2021, and rates were lower and home prices were a lot lower. So even if you had a medium correction in home prices of 10%, that would help a little bit. But again, we have more buyers than sellers, and that this is again because seniors are not doing the things that they used to do. This housing market is unlike any housing market before because you have fewer people getting married, you have lower homeowner household formation rate, and then you have fewer people selling and downsizing. So more people are aging in place and more people are living alone for longer. So 26% of adults live by themselves. That doesn't help the housing inventory very much. It's, Harvard Joint Housing Study says that only 1 in 10 seniors can afford to live in assisted living. And for that reason, a lot of people are stuck in their homes. So it's a multi-prong and complex problem to solve. And a lot of it's going to have to do with zoning restructuring, local reforms, federal reforms, and it's not, again, there's no quick fix.
Speaking of no quick fix, the last point that you touched on about the affordability of assisted care for people who need it, right? Does there also need to be sort of a policy prescription to deal with that because of the aging of Americans and people not being able to afford that kind of care? So then, does that have the dual effect of helping elderly Americans and also loosening up the housing market?
Yeah, I think that there's some really creative solutions. So there's been a chronic undersupply of home health care aides, and that's not improving with a slowdown in immigration because so many of the healthcare aides are foreign born, and guest workers or on their path to citizenship, and that has been, and as more people, as the silver tsunami, the majority of the boomers have passed the threshold of becoming seniors, that only amplifies the numbers. So I have written extensively about a Golden Girls type housing arrangement where you have shared housing in single family housing and you'd have shared home healthcare workers. You got to think of new strategies, but not only is aging very lonely, and loneliness is a major contributor to aging faster. That a shared housing agreement helps that, also shares expenses, and also helps with the healthcare shortage. But creativity is critical here, and there's got to be a lot of optionality, and everything that needs to be on the table.
I love the Golden Girls solution, Meredith. That's a good one. Thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Julie.